Okay, opening your trailer with a joke about TikTok is probably the most cack-handed way you could ask people to apologize to Shrek the Third. So I was at home working on a new video. Crazy, right? And then I suddenly get a Twitter notification on my phone. It's discussing film, and apparently a teaser for Shrek 5 came out. Well, I gotta take a look at this. I wonder how everything's going in the land of far, far away. Puss in Boots: The Last Wish was fantastic, so any reservations I have about this possibly ruining the ending of Shrek 4 should be put to rest, right? Right? Do you believe that? Hi, hello, I'm Cartoonji, and I like Shrek. And I think a lot of people like Shrek too. So when Shrek 5 was announced, a lot of people responded with a lot of excitement and great anticipation for Shrek's glorious return. Unless you remembered Shrek Forever After, in which case you likely had many a question. Shrek has always been DreamWorks' golden goose, their most iconic franchise, their mascot if you will. The first two films still hold up tremendously well and single-handedly changed the future of Western animated movies forever, for better or for worse. Their subversions of fairy tale stories and popular animated tropes made for some incredibly charming comedies that still took their stories and characters seriously and had enough depth of their own to not come off as too cynical and jaded. Ironic given DreamWorks was a company born out of spite, but I digress. Once Shrek the Third came out though, the cracks were beginning to form and a lot of people started seeing Shrek as this crass, one-note and cynical pop culture spamming thing that was poorly influencing a lot of animated movies. It's been said a few times, but Shrek the Third is the kind of film that the people who don't like Shrek 1 and 2 want you to think Shrek as a franchise is like. Naturally, Shrek had about overstayed his welcome at this point and a course correction of some kind was needed that could wrap things up in a mostly satisfying manner, which ended up being Shrek Forever After. And despite it being polarizing on release, it's become a bit of a cult favorite in recent years, and while not being a solid movie, was still leaps and bounds ahead of Shrek the Third. It actually had something new to say about these characters and managed to wrap up the Shrek series in a way that seemed to satisfy most people, which is sadly a rarity these days. Now, Shrek as a franchise hasn't been completely ogre. Puss in Boots got its own movie after this, and then about a decade later we got Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, which everyone loved, realistic depiction of a panic attack notwithstanding, but it was generally accepted that Shrek was done. I mean, Shrek Forever After was literally marketed as the final chapter. You don't get much more conclusive than that. I mean, hell, the film's original title was the final chapter, and what the film had to say about Shrek as a character and the way they rounded out his arc seemed to suggest that this was how things were meant to end. I mean, it's not been much of a secret that there was originally a plan to have 5 Shrek movies, but Jeffrey Katzenberg, co-founder of DreamWorks and petty asshole, insisted that the story in Shrek Forever After was the right way to end Shrek's journey. So with all of that said, what the hell is this? Granted, it's been known for a while that DreamWorks and Universal have been trying to get Shrek 5 off the ground. I mean, I was hearing rumors about this film floating around back when I was 13, for God's sake, but after a while, everyone just kind of forgot it was in development. It was also around this time that everyone started singing a different tune with Forever After. So when we finally received confirmation that Shrek 5 was real and releasing in 2026, questions were raised. Now, I'm not gonna act like people weren't excited. After all, Shrek is still a widely beloved and popular IP, and his presence in meme culture has absolutely done a lot to keep the brand relevant in the years it's been dormant for. But outside of the novelty of there being a brand new Shrek movie coming out soon, I personally didn't see why this was a necessary film the same way that everyone questions if Toy Story 4 was a necessary film. I mean, you compare the reception to the two side by side, and it becomes clear that a lot more people are happy about the return of Shrek than the return of Toy Story. I mean, I suppose if they made a substantially better film than Forever After and chose to end the story there, I could accept it. For as much as I like Forever After, that film had, well, it had problems. Side note, but I just remember both Toy Story 5 and Shrek 5 are releasing in 2026. This doesn't mean anything, I just thought that was a pretty funny coincidence. So as much as I had my reservations about Shrek 5, I could at least see a reality where its existence might not have been so bad. And it could even have the chance to one-up Shrek 4, especially when Last Wish showed that there's still plenty of life and cool things you can do with the Shrek IP. Then the new teaser dropped and threw everybody into an organized panic because, oh my god, they changed the character designs! Also opened the trailer with a joke about TikTok, which, yeah, I suppose that was a somewhat bold creative choice in 2018 when the film was likely being rewritten because it's clearly been through about a decade's worth of production hell, but hey, look, TikTok. In all seriousness though, I'm gonna actually talk about this teaser because despite it only being about 20 seconds, there's quite a lot to actually discuss here. So let's address the elephant in the room real quick, and the main thing that everyone seems to be up in arms over: the character designs. Simply taking one look at this trailer and comparing it to all the previous Shrek movies, it's very obvious that the art style has been shaken up a fair bit. It's not an excessive departure from what we're familiar with, but it's just different enough to the point that you notice it, and I don't think I'm alone in thinking the new looks are super uncanny. And it's not because these are bad character designs. When viewed in isolation, these are still recognizably Shrek, Donkey, and Fiona, and animation-wise, this is easily a step above all of the previous Shrek films, because, you know, that's how new installments are supposed to look after a decade of absence. The animation is very expressive, there's a lot of life behind the eyes of these characters, it doesn't feel like a soulless redesign done on a whim, but at the same time, Why does it look so wrong? Simple. Shrek's original art style is iconic and has been for nearly 25 years. There were no deviations in the franchise's art direction for a very long time, and even with Puss in Boots: The Last Wish having an incredibly different art style, it still retained enough aspects of Shrek's DNA to the point that it doesn't come off as distracting, and instead just looks like the natural evolution that it was. Hell, when Puss's life is flashing before his eyes in that movie, and he has a memory with Shrek and Donkey, you can clearly see that they're the original character designs. Also, Pinocchio shows up in Last Wish and also has not received any major design changes compared to how he looks in the Shrek 5 teaser. Also, Shrek, Fiona, and Donkey show up in a new DreamWorks logo animation featuring a lot of their popular characters, and they're completely unchanged. These new designs aren't bad or anything, but given how Shrek's original art style and character designs have been deeply embedded in pop culture for the past 24 years, it's not surprising that everyone is shocked or even disgusted about how these characters look now. Hell, to add to how recognizable and popular Shrek's original character designs are, even in this trailer they used clip art of his original design. They didn't even use the new model for this, which would have been very easy for them to do. They just grabbed some clip art of Shrek's original model and called it a day. And seeing these two designs side by side in the same trailer really adds to how jarring this is. As for the designs themselves, the main differences I can see seem to be with how the faces are animated. While I adore how expressive the animation is, there's something about Shrek's face specifically that feels far more, I don't know, human? Even Fiona looks more human than usual, and that's fucking ironic. They're not nearly as smug, their pupils are bigger, they feel less like ogres and more like green humans. It's very distracting, not to mention completely antithetical to the main theme of the franchise. They look like if market researchers got their hands on the original designs and thought to pretty them up to be more conventionally appealing to audiences, when the entire fucking point of Shrek is that he's an ogre. He's not meant to look more human or pretty, he's meant to look somewhat ugly. Not avert your eyes, children, it's hideous ugly, but just ugly enough to juxtapose the other characters. The proportions are also noticeably different, and I think that might be the main issue, because plenty of people have already done fan edits where all they've done is space out his eyes and features a little, and it looks completely fine. Good even. The designs overall look far more mellowed out compared to previously. Again, that could be the effect that fatherhood is having on my men, but I digress. If I had to describe it, it feels like if Shrek was animated by Illumination rather than DreamWorks. In fact, that's it actually. Shrek 5's animation feels very Illumination-y. I get that a lot of the shock also comes from everyone not being used to what Shrek looks like with more modern CG animation. I guess there's a certain charm to Shrek's old look that benefited from the limitations of technology back in the day, so seeing him having so much more life and movement in his eyes feels a bit off from what we're used to. But not only does Shrek Forever After, a movie released in 2011, still look good to this day, there's just something missing from this. And I'm just talking about Shrek so far. I haven't felt the need to mention the rest of the characters because it's fairly obvious with him specifically. Okay, Donkey as well. He looks old as fuck. I mean, the majority of Shrek merch, posters, and advertising focuses on his face. Any changes made to his design are going to be easily noticed. I don't know if it has something to do with the fact that this is going to be one of the first DreamWorks movies to not be produced in-house. In case you forgot, The Wild Robot was the last DreamWorks movie that was going to be produced in-house. Every movie afterwards is going to be outsourced. I don't know if that had something to do with the redesigns. Again, DreamWorks have the original models and have already used them pretty recently with modern CG, and they look completely fine. But at the end of the day, I'm not going to be completely against this film just because it looks a little off. No, what I'm more interested in is the film's story, and if it will at least retain Shrek's identity that's been wavering ever since Shrek the Third. Firstly, to get it out of the way, yes, the TikTok reference is cringe, but it is to be expected. A big part of Shrek's identity is parodying and riffing on pop culture. It's been like that ever since the beginning, though I will say it is completely fair to take issue with this joke because number one, it's not funny, and number two, it's the exact same joke that so many other properties have made about TikTok already. There's nothing inventive here, it feels very out of touch. I don't think the movie is gonna go in the facepalm worthy out of touch how do you do fellow kids social media referencing route. If you need a convincing reason why that would likely end in disaster, then I'd highly recommend Ralph Breaks the Internet. But the fact the first joke we see from Shrek 5 is a tired and overdone TikTok and social media reference about the internet being super wacky is not inspiring confidence. First impressions are everything after all, and given the lows that Shrek has managed to reach before, I think being skeptical is pretty valid. But I'm mostly concerned about what this film is going to do to justify its existence. Again, all signs pointed to Shrek Forever After being the last one. It wrapped up everything in a neat little bow. Everyone was mostly satisfied with how it ended, and it even got Jeffrey Katzenberg's blessing. Even with 5 Shrek movies planned from the beginning, all signs pointed towards Shrek's time finally being up. And I sincerely doubt that whatever story Shrek 5 is gonna have is not gonna be from the original plans. It's the same situation as Kung Fu Panda 4. Kung Fu Panda actually had 6 films planned out from the beginning, beginning, yet Kung Fu Panda 3 ended things rather conclusively. Then after that, it was complete radio silence for ages until eventually DreamWorks decided they were going to make another one to continue that plan of having 6 movies. And what ended up happening was that the film turned out to be painfully mediocre and did nothing to justify its existence. It only served to ruin the satisfying ending that had come before and to keep dragging the franchise's feet for another decade just to make more money. Now, to Shrek's credit, it's been considerably longer since its last mainline installment, and you can even argue that the initial reception to Shrek Forever After could warrant another movie to hopefully smooth things over if anyone's still disappointed with how it all ended. We'll have to see more of the movie to get a conclusive answer on that, but so far nothing about this film is coming off like it's from a genuine place, and it seems to mostly be banking off nostalgia. All-Star playing in both of the teasers is a dead giveaway on that, and the last thing I want is a Shrek movie banking off people's nostalgia for the originals with nothing much else to offer. I mean, for a franchise as irreverent as Shrek, this seems like the kind of move they would make fun of rather than indulge in themselves. Not to toot my own horn or anything, but I called from frame 1 that Kung Fu Panda 4 was going to be an unnecessary continuation. Everything about how that film was marketed had that vibe. I seriously hope I'm proven wrong with Shrek 5, and I also don't want DreamWorks to start going on a hot streak with terrible sequels, because for the longest time, it was commonly accepted that their sequels kicked all kinds of ass, and they were oftentimes better than the originals. I do hope this one manages to pull through, as lackluster as this teaser was. I will say, I think people are being very dramatic about the new designs. I've seen a lot of calls already to do the Sonic movie thing where people act corny for a month straight and demand a new design, and while with Sonic the design was definitely needed if that franchise was going to see any sort of success, I'm gonna be real, Shrek 5 is not getting that same treatment. You can kick and scream all you want, but this is not nearly on the same level that Sonic's design was on. That was something that warranted fixing because it was genuinely unsightly and was driving away tickets. Shrek 5 on the other hand is just jarring and different, and it's just gonna take some getting used to. It's not a complete and utter failure of character design. I think we're getting a bit too comfortable with demanding changes for anything we initially don't like just because it worked that one time with Sonic about 5 years ago. Companies should listen to consumers when they screw up, obviously, but something like this doesn't warrant that extreme of a reaction. As for the film itself, if it blows, it blows. I'll likely make another video once we get a proper trailer that I can actually dig into, but for the time being, I will continue to approach Shrek 5 with incredibly cautious optimism. Anyway, that's the end of the video. Play Yakuza or something.